The question remains, do animals sense natural disasters before they occur? Even if this is true, how can animals sense it before it happens? On the morning of December 26, 2004, in Indonesia, the scene looked like a beautiful day. With a suitable climate, the sun was shining, and the charming Indian Ocean coast was calm as 7 o'clock approached. Exactly 59 minutes later, the calm turned into chows, screams and terror as an earthquake occurred under the sea. The magnitude of the earthquake reached 9 degrees. A wall of water approximately 25 meters. They have appeared on the horizon. Witnesses said that it made sounds like an approaching heavy storm. Although people made a forensic escape within minutes, the waves swept into the city, destroying 80% of the buildings in an instant. It struck the Indian Ocean, reaching a height of 9 rains or more. These waves flooded the coasts and beaches and drowned homes, streets, and people as well. And not only in Indonesia, but in many countries of the Asian continent. These waves affected coastal areas far from East Africa. After the tsunami ended, and when people began to understand what had happened, official reports came out from every country affected by the tsunami, explaining the consequences and losses. A group of reports reported the death of more than 225,000 people from 12 different countries. What was strange about the matter, and what sparked controversy at the time, was that some of the eyewitnesses who survived the disaster spoke of a strange story. It was said that the animals, especially the elephants that Indonesia is famous for, were running crazy and strangely. It was heading to higher places hours before the disaster struck. In fact, even the birds were leaving their nests and flying away. And the dogs were nervous and working and hiding inside the houses. In fact, even the locals are almost unanimous in saying that in a herd of buffalo on the beach, they looked at the sea with nervous glances, then fled towards the top of a nearby hill. This was a few minutes before the tsunami hit. Hence, people started talking about the ability of animals to sense natural disasters. They started reporting on animal behavior before the tsunami hit. But the matter expanded a little, and they began to compose stories and legends that scientists proved to be incorrect. As rumors spread, researchers began to take serious steps in studying history in order to know the behavior of animals before earthquakes occurred. On the other hand, they study reality so that they can find out whether animals really can predict earthquakes. Or is this story a lie? The 2004 tsunami was not the only tsunami of its kind that prompted researchers to investigate animals and their behavior before disasters struck. There are many other disasters, ranging from tsunamis to volcanic eruptions or landslides and earthquakes. In each, animals of different species were displaying unusual behaviors. You will not find anything new on this topic. Rather, we discovered through research that one of the Greek philosophers, Homicides, recorded a similar incident in the year 373 BC. Rats, dogs, and snakes were reported to have abandoned the city of Hellas in the days before a catastrophic earthquake. Of course, researchers did not stop at historical events. They tried more than once to verify this themselves. In 2014, you had a group of Japanese researchers who made a very strange move. They preferred to track the amount of milk produced by a group of cows on the farm. You may be a little surprised by this issue regarding milk quantity, but the truth is that it is a smart move on their part. Cows produce milk in constant quantities almost every day. Any change that cows feel affects their daily activity, which includes dairy products. It so happened that about 3 weeks before the earthquake struck the area, the amount of milk produced by the cows decreased dramatically due to stress. The researchers couldn't find out where the cows predicted the earthquake would occur a full 3 weeks before it happened. But at least they did. Many animals possess this ability, the most famous of which are studies conducted by the Max Planck Behavioral Institute, which conducted experiments on cows, sheep, and dogs. In the studies, these researchers placed tracking collars that measured the speed of animals on a farm in Italy in the earthquake-prone Marcia region. The data the collars were sending to researchers showed that 20 hours had passed before the earthquake occurred in the area. The movement of animals has changed dramatically. As the earthquake approached, their behavior changed more and more. The question that puzzles scientists until now is how were they able to sense the approach of natural disasters before they occurred? To understand this, scientists began studying the changes that accompany disasters themselves. They concluded that animals can sense these disasters through the features that accompany them. The collars on dogs' necks. Some scientists assumed that animals and birds can feel the vibrations that occur in tectonic plates in the Earth's crust. When they encounter shaking ground, they begin to move away from the shaking site, or at least begin to exhibit strange stress-induced behavior. However, there is no strong evidence for this statement, and we cannot prove it scientifically. However, it is still under consideration by the scientific community. There are also other strong assumptions, which as that animals can notice changes and cracks in the Earth's crust as a result of earthquakes. This means that they notice cracks in the ground, which people often don't notice. In addition, pressure from the movement of tectonic plates breaks the chemical bonds between minerals in the air or water. This leaves the air charged with electricity, and the animals can feel this in their fur. Because breaking the bonds between minerals also changes the acidity of the water. We notice that frogs and amphibians in general emerge from the water suddenly, and the reproductive period stops about 8 days before the earthquake occurs. This is because amphibian skin is very porous and is greatly affected by the acidity of the water. The animals that showed the most strange behavior before the earthquakes were snakes. They would emerge from their hiding places so deep in the snow that they would sometimes die. At first, scientists thought it was suicide. But the truth is that it was a reaction to their feeling of an approaching natural disaster. They come out of their hiding places and are met with snow and extreme cold, which leads to their death. The snakes began to feel the constant proximity of the waves and sounds coming from the ground, such as electromagnetic waves, to which snakes' bodies are very sensitive. The animals that showed the most strange behavior before the earthquakes were snakes. For this reason, researchers say that snakes are the most sensitive animals to earthquakes. You might also be surprised when we can predict from insects the approaching natural disasters. Only ants have been subjected to studies that have shown that they are highly sensitive to waves. It can detect the smallest changes in temperature and electromagnetic fields. Furthermore, it senses changes in the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, all of which are indicators of an approaching natural disaster. Hence, researchers began using ants to predict earthquakes. When the ants begin to sense changes, they emerge from their burrows in an unnatural way. They gather in single file or groups and go looking for another place to live. But often, the changes are beyond their ability. Because of this, a large number of ants begin to die. When researchers see this, they immediately know that an earthquake is about to hit the area. With the difficulty of predicting earthquakes and the failure of some countries to install earthquake sensors, there is a question that arises. Can we take advantage of all these animals and all these signals to prepare for natural disasters? In 2020, I published a scientific paper by a group of scientists from Germany and Russia in which they proposed, based on research conducted before that, some of which we mentioned, that they could track a large number of animals, reptiles, and birds in different earthquake zones around the world, and use computer algorithms to analyze their movement patterns, and thus be able to predict natural disasters through the changes that occur, of animal behavior, to make it seem as if the animals are surveillance devices. Although the issue seems complex, difficult, and expensive, and it is indeed so, the project has been agreed upon and is currently under implementation. Data on the movement of thousands of animals around the world is collected through a monitoring system located on the International Space Station. It's called ICAROS, and although it's a bit expensive and still under research, it's still a big step forward in the world of sensors. Always, when we come to study an animal, we feel the greatness and power of God Almighty. We see how every animal that lives in a specific environment was created by God with specific characteristics that suit the environment in which it lives. You find that this animal has abilities that allow it to deal with this environment that is difficult or impossible for humans. That is why you always find us interfering in the animal world to understand it more, learn how its abilities work, and how we can benefit from this and imitate them with inventions that make our lives easier. One of the abilities that some animals are believed to possess is the ability to sense natural dangers before they occur, such as earthquakes and volcanoes. Since we only know about these disasters when they happen, we cannot avoid their damage. Although we have begun to develop devices that alert us to approaching disasters, these devices are also not as effective as they could be. Animals also sense these disasters before our devices sense them, according to eyewitnesses. But that's it. Who came here? Everyone arrived. You are the best people. Give us a like before you leave so we can see how many people made it to the end. Don't forget, if you have a question that confuses you, write it to us in the comments below the video so we can answer it. In most of the cases we do. Now, we take from comments. Goodbye.